Peace and Black Power family. Welcome to another episode of Knowledge Radio, a place where knowledge is born. It's your host, Knowledge Born a Lot, and we are here and we are honored, privileged, and blessed to have a humanitarian in the building who is so dynamic and multifaceted and multi-layered. One who operates from a base of wisdom, compassion, and care for the people that the world forgot, our children. We have children, we bring them into the world, and as soon as we get them here, we trying to drop them off to somebody else. You understand? So we never really get a chance in the hustle or bustle of making ends meet to ensure that they have food, clothing, and shelter. We never get a time to relate to those that are related to us and that come from us. So this God sent angel has saw fit to dedicate her life in so many ways to hold space for our children and be transformative with them. So let's welcome this gentle soul, this magnificent heart, this brilliant spirit and creative mind to the platform, the author and what I dubbed the youth transformational specialist.
Wow, I like that.
Miss Taye Jones is in the building. Welcome to the show. How you feeling, sister?
I am feeling amazing after that introduction. Thank you. I'm humbled by that, and I'm gonna have to borrow that. Youth
It's all yours.
specialist. I love that. I love that.
That is all yours. That's you. So.
Thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you again for the invitation, the opportunity to be here with your audience.
I definitely was very, very excited to see that there are books out here for our youth that one identify with us off of the rip, just looking at the cover and then seeing, a step further, our youth whom we normally take a hardline approach to, our youth with special needs. With our sojourn here in America, we have been very, very, very negligent in the space of mental health disorders and the like. There's no such thing as depressed. You just lazy, stuff like that. Like, so the stigmatisms that go along with it, like feeling weak and feeling vulnerable, with your own self. So now translate that to our children, not being able to recognize these adult terminologies in our youth, and then learning disabilities and the like. So to take that, spectrum and then look at it and see how it spreads, and then create a character and some characters and a story around it to illustrate it. I think it was, magnificent. All of that from the cover, me just looking, you see what I'm saying? Just
Yeah,
looking at the cover and,
you got a lot
extrapolating
to
that from that experience and just knowing the challenges that, young black men suffer, in this country, whether they have health issues, mental health issues, or not. Just that existence, that trial and tribulation, and then showing a father or a father figure in the
Yeah,
picture. You see what I'm saying? But
yeah,
with so many of our brothers being removed from that equation, and it's left for the mothers and the mothering community because it's still a village.
indeed,
It takes a
indeed.
village, but it's still a village right there. So
Yeah,
many who don't have that core nucleus of love and understanding and patience, and those who don't have the proper training, they don't know. They're just like, hey, there's no textbook, for children, let alone children who have developmental challenges. So,
indeed,
I just
indeed.
I saw that and I was like, oh, let me see if we could get our sister on here and welcome her into the spotlight to talk about, this latest book and how you got into all of that. I kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but I want to kind of reel it back in and give you this space and place to introduce yourself to the audience and what got you writing, what inspired you to write.
So I'll go back and start a little bit. I'm Taye Jones, and I am a speech language pathologist. And what that means is that I work with adults and children who have difficulty communicating. And it could be because of a developmental delay, it could be because of a learning disability, or it could be from something neurological like an autism spectrum disorder. I work predominantly with children, and I do consider myself to be an advocate and a champion for children because I don't see them being defined by their disabilities. I also try to help and empower parents so that they're able to work with their children because, yeah, kids spend a lot of time in school, but parents know their children quite well. And if we give you those tools, you can help to close those gaps as well. And in my work as a SLP, I found that a lot of the books that I was looking for to use with my students didn't feature people who look like me. And some of my students are Black and Hispanic, but they weren't seeing books that had characters that looked that way. Or even for my white students, I wanted them to see books that also feature children of color because they need to understand that the world is bigger than whatever their experience is. So from there, I became more intentional about the books that I would share in my therapy sessions. I wanted to make sure that every child either saw a mirror representation of themselves or got a view into another world so they could start to understand what it's like to be from another culture, another type of family structure, another religion, and so on. And from there, the idea to write my own book came. And that's how I came about with writing Liam's First Cut. This is my first book. And for me, it was very important that I wrote a book that featured a Black main character, and it ended up being a Black boy. And I also wanted to shine a light on the Black family. So as you mentioned on the cover, you do see very prominently Liam going into the barbershop and his dad is behind him. You don't see the whole figure, but you see that there's a man behind him and giving him that support, walking him into the barbershop. And that was very intentional for me too.
I think that's amazing. There's so many cultural tie-ins that you might see grossly misrepresented when
Hmm.
you see others look at an experience like that. Like
Right.
they had a movie that came out, Barbershop, and Ice Cube is the director. When we look at it with a trained eye, we could see that there were other influences that were there. You know, certain instances and things like that that wouldn't happen in the barbershop that they put in the movie. You know,
Hmm.
so the world outside may say, okay, this is what goes on in the barbershop. Same thing with beauty shop. This is what goes on in the beauty shop. You understand what I'm saying? So there's a sacredness that is there where you might see a level of respect, but then
Yeah.
you also see a level of exploitation. You know that's going on there. So
Mhm.
someone inferring versus someone having direct access is very critical when shaping that type of mind frame of a
Yeah.
cultural motif, a barbershop experience. It's already apprehension with young boys going into the barbershop already. So now
Hmm.
you're dealing with a young boy, you know, going into a place, you know, where he doesn't make direct contact, eye contact with men. And men, we live for that. You know, the young brothers, they come in, the pull your pants up, stand up straight, give them that, environment that you're walking into a cultural place where manhood training takes place,
Right.
not just the haircut, you
Right.
know,
It's not just a
yes,
haircut,
yes,
and
sir, no, sir,
barbershops are so
blah, 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 right,
they're so integral to our
right,
communities, like you said. And sometimes
right,
boys are not brought to the barbershop by a man. Sometimes it's a woman, it's a mother
right,
or a mother
right,
figure that brings the
right,
child to the barbershop. But I wanted to show that Liam's preparation for going to the barbershop doesn't look that different than someone that is typical. That, most
right,
children have apprehension when they're approaching something that's new and they need to
mhm,
prepare for it. And I wanted to show how his family comes together to help him prepare for this experience. And it's a partnership between his parents and also the
I
school is
love it,
involved. So in the
right,
book, you'll see that Liam prepares for his visit with something called a social story. And social stories are often used with children who have autism, but anyone can use a social story to help prepare you for a new or unknown experience, or help to train you on what's appropriate behavior for a scenario. But because I work with children and because I work in school settings, it was important for me, and because I value education and that parent teacher relationship, it was important to me to show that collaboration. So in one of the pages, you'll see that Liam prepares by actually working with his mom with something that he created in school. So it's a book that was made with his therapist in school, but it's to help him get ready for this new experience that he's looking forward to, but he's also a little apprehensive about it.
I think that's beautiful.
Thank you.
And that's the reference to the tie-in, related from your life experience,
Mm-hmm.
relating it onto the page and relating it within a cultural setting, you know, that you come up in. So I think that's amazing how, before we went on, I said it takes a village. And, this is a perfect illustration of how strong the village, once was. Like we came up like this. We came up in this fashion right here. Like when I
Yeah.
went to school, the teachers that I had, my brothers and sisters before me had the same teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Our teachers lived in our communities. My teacher would ride past me in the car saying, "You better beat me to school." You understand what I'm saying? So it
Yeah.
wasn't it wasn't a stranger, when I was
Right.
coming up.
Right.
Until I went to about middle school. And then definitely when I got to high school, all of the transplants that came in and you could see the difference, that 45-minute drive, you live in Morristown or someplace like that and you come in, into, my community, you're looking like, oh, the animals. You understand? So you're there to get a paycheck and leave, you know. So that non-relatability, you know, I couldn't even imagine if somebody had, a learning challenge or, coming up with us, what they would have did to them. Probably would have threw them in jail. I think youth detention would have been easier, than, trying to educate, through those things. They already had, some of us in the crate in what they call the other classrooms away from all of the other students. So they were
Mm-hmm.
already preparing them for, uh, that life isolated from, their friends and stuff like that. So
Right.
it was a challenge. But we came up with some teachers that cared, some teachers that
Yeah.
cared because they lived in that community versus, people who came from the outside, uh,
Right.
from other
And
places. And it
it's
showed.
just do come from other communities and come in and they just have a genuine passion and are passionate
Right.
about making a difference in their students' lives. So I don't want to say that everybody who comes in with bad intentions. There's a little bit of everything, and unfortunately, there are the times now where education is there's such a burden on educators that even folks who are from within that community don't always have the ability to do and work the way that they want to. They're still passionate about educating, but their hands are tied by bureaucracy and paperwork and other restrictions that keep them from making those important connections. So I wanted to highlight the experiences that I see and the people and the connections that I hope to also empower other people to continue to to strengthen between parents and schools and all in all the ultimate goal is to make the children feel empowered and prepared for any experience that they're going to deal with.
Yeah, I agree. Raising children in these school systems nowadays, you got to be prepared for everything. And
Absolutely.
then, you, if you were in a daycare setting, just for instance, if you had one teacher, the teacher could only be responsible for eight, I believe, depending on your state, eight children at one time.
Hmm.
So if a teacher has 10 or 12 children in the class, she needs another teacher in the class.
Right.
So you look at a teacher's workload with 25 to 30 students, she should have two other teachers, or he, two other teachers in the class. And
Mm-hmm.
they're in an environment where it's them. It's one teacher with 20 students or 25 students. In the private schools, you would never hear of such a thing. You see what I'm saying? So, how could it be okay, to burden one person with that type of responsibility and underpay them, and then restrict them, and then, mandate in the manner in which they teach, you see what I'm saying, and expect positive results and hold their feet to the fire for, state test scores and, all of the other stuff that goes along with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a challenge. I do understand that,
It's definitely a
from
challenge.
firsthand experience.
Definitely challenging
So
time.
I give a little leeway sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Not all the time, but sometimes I hear it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No,
what's been your experience, kind of like, you know, with the children and the parents, when in schools, like how do you, kind of fuse all of that together in the developmental process, like saying just an example of starting from scratch, a new child, like how does a child end up in your care or in your program? What does that look like?
oftentimes it's coming from a referral from a pediatrician or a neurologist that has evaluated the child and found that they're not where they're supposed to be developmentally, and they'll make that referral for the parents to seek out intervention to try to close those gaps. So that's usually where a lot of my clients come from. In the school setting, the process is a little bit different. But privately speaking, parents either have talked to a doctor or parents know. Parents have other children who are older and they recall how their older children developed, or I say it's like a parent's intuition. You just feel like something's not right, and they may want to reach out just to either confirm their suspicions or to acknowledge that there's nothing wrong and that they were overreacting, but one way or the other, they may just want to reach out to a speech pathologist to find out if something's going on. But there's like, milestone markers, just like by your first birthday, children are expected to start walking. When it comes to communication and language, there are different milestones that we look at as well. So when children aren't meeting those milestones, it's usually a red flag that you may want to seek some assistance. And what I found was that a lot of parents in Black and Brown communities, at least that I was interacting with, didn't know about that, and they were often being told to wait. And waiting is never the best answer. The earlier you can get the intervention, the more likelihood your child will be successful in closing those gaps and catching up. So I started my website, Having Our Say, which is a blog site to give those free tips and free resources. So you would have access to that information to know what to look for, to know what your 1-year-old should be doing, what should your 2-year-old be doing. And if they're not doing those things, then you should reach out to a professional, not necessarily me. You could reach out to someone that lives where you live, someone that is within your insurance network, whatever it is, but you should talk to someone because your child should be reaching all of those milestones when it comes to communicating as well.
Wonderful. So how much time do you have to spend, or would you say you find with, you know, educating the parents, you know, or a parent, so to speak, in regards to the denial? There's nothing wrong with my child. My child's fine. Blah blah blah. Like in your experience, have you had those kinds of instances? And how do you kind of help people overcome that? You know, I would call it, like, I guess, a shame factor. You see what I'm saying? Like I'm a good parent type of situation. Like, so that means there's nothing wrong with my child.
And guilt. A lot of times there's guilt that either they didn't notice that something was wrong sooner, or wondering what they could have done differently to avoid the situation that they're currently in. And like I said earlier on, I think I'm probably one of those more compassionate cheerleader type of therapists. So I'm not only there to try to champion your child, but I'm also there for you. And I want parents to understand that there may or may not have been something you missed. But even if you did, we need to focus on the fact that you're here now and that you've identified what's going on, and we need to work on closing that gap. And not to feel guilt or not to wallow in that guilt, but it does happen, and there's still people who worry about what does it mean if my child has a diagnosis? Will this follow them into their future? Will this hurt them academically or professionally? And again, I think I try really to get parents to understand that the most important thing is to get the intervention, and helping your child reach those milestones and become successful is more important than anything else. Look at our president-elect. If you know about him, he talks openly about the fact that he had a stuttering disorder. So oftentimes people who stuttered were considered to lack intelligence, to never be able to be good communicators. But I think he's a prime example of someone we see openly speaking, giving speeches, and he's risen to the level where he is now. So you can't make assumptions. And I don't like for parents to get too caught up or too hung up on those labels or that diagnosis. I'd rather you focus on where we are and working with the information that we have now and helping to get your child the intervention and the help that they need.
Okay. So now I have to switch gears back to the book.
Yeah. Sorry. I feel like I always end up talking speech stuff because I wear
No,
both of those
I
hats.
love both. I love it. So yeah, I definitely. But I want to kind of give equal footing to both aspects. So
Sure.
how long has the book been out, and what was that feeling like? After the work and the process, leading up to the book and then actually putting the book out, and also if you could talk about how the book has been received thus far.
Sure. So the book officially released to the public a little over a month ago. September 29th was the official release date. And it has been received quite well. When I think about the project, it was work that I did over the course of a year. And during that time, people knew about it, but it wasn't something that everyone could experience. So it was a little nerve-wracking to release the book out to the world and then to find out what will people think. Will people enjoy it? Will people accept it? I don't know if I mentioned before, but when it comes to children's literature, there aren't a lot of books that feature Black main characters, and there are even less that feature children that have special needs. So of course I wonder, like, how will people receive this book? But it's had a great reception so far. Everyone has given me wonderful feedback. The best feedback I could ask for comes from the children. And a lot of little boys have looked at the book and said, this is me. I'm Liam. She wrote a book about me. Or they think it's actually them. And that's what I wanted. I wanted this book to be a mirror reflection so they could look at a book for a change and see themselves in this story. I've had people who have daughters, and their daughters enjoyed the book, even though they've never gone to the barber shop. They just enjoyed it. A lot of the adults have told me that it's just a feel-good book, and that they enjoyed reading about Liam's journey, and they felt like they went on the journey with Liam. So far, I'm very appreciative that it's been received very well.
Snap. So I gotta ask, in your mind, because you said movie, did you think about animation, or making Liam and his family into superheroes or something like that, or any thoughts? That's there. It's next.
I did think
With
about,
those young minds. Go ahead.
yeah, I'm sorry. I did think about animation. That would be really cool to see an animated version of the book. So it's not something that I've been working on just yet, but I would like to. I think, like I said, the book just came out, so it's still pretty early. But yeah, I would love to do something with animation with Liam and his family, and seeing it all come together.
I think that would be amazing right there. That's just my mind. Thinking about what I'm thinking about. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like
Yeah,
that. Because, in that realm, just like you said, there aren't many books. There aren't many, positive, images overall, you know, by design as well,
of course.
of our children, our young men, our young women, things like that, in a fashion where which they can look to themselves the same way those children were looking to themselves. We got to get grown people to do it. Black Panther was like a sensation that swept across. But children would love to see children. I grew up watching Dennis the Menace and all all of those other shows that came on, and there weren't too many that looked like me. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? So you know, my children, they grew up watching Caillou and all of these other things. So it's like a socially acceptable situation to not see yourself.
Mhm.
So how are you looking at yourself when you don't see yourself? So
Right.
the more content creators that we have out there that have viable stories and positive messages and messages of empowerment, and able to meet our children where they are and to give them that push that's necessary to be able to see that they identify. I think that the more the merrier. I know it's easier said than done, but this is where everybody who has a collective investment, via our children and wanting to see positive images would be behind it. If they're behind the book, they should be behind the animation. You see what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
pushing that out there. And if there are other uh, people that are out there that's supposed to be, sympathetic or identified to our plight, they would want to see something like that as well. You see,
Mhm.
so
I
for
agree.
whoever that applies to.
And I think it's important that as we get more creators who are creating this content, that we also maintain a critical eye and make sure that the content is authentic and giving an accurate portrayal of Black and Brown children. Because sometimes it happens where we're still seeing a stereotypical image or a stereotypical story. And honestly too, I think we have to make sure that we're putting out things that make our children feel good, because when we talk about reading in particular, children don't always want to read stories about oppression, and they don't want to read stories about struggle. They want to also read stories where they see themselves just having a good time doing regular things that kids do. So I would love to see more of that as well in the industry.
Definitely. We're a long way from Fat Albert, I believe. Watching Fat Albert, I think that was about the only thing that I saw when I was young that kind of stuck with me in regards to that. So um, this place where you are, with this book and with the work that you do, what would you say would be some of the goals you know that you have for what you do and what you create?
Um, the goals for me keep changing. Initially, my goals were only focusing on the children, but it's definitely expanded. I want to continue to educate adults, especially professionals in my space, to be more intentional about what they're showing the children that they work with, and recognizing the messages that they may be sending, either intentionally or in not on what's the word looking for, in intentionally or not, I'll put it like that. But I want them to be more aware of what they're doing. And I want to try to keep giving those resources to those individuals. And it's not easy. And in part, it's just by design, by the way that the publishing industry is set up. So when we look for books, it's not easy to find books that have representation of diverse characters, because the majority of books just don't. So you have to be persistent, you have to be dedicated, and you have to be determined. But I want people to take that action. It's worth it in the end. If we're talking about empowering our students and building future leaders and making sure that all of our children feel validated and represented and seen, then it's worth it to take that extra step. So in addition to producing content for the children, I also want to continue training and educating parents, professionals, and caregivers to make sure that you're using books, images, toys that provide that diverse representation for everyone, so that either they're feeling seen through those images or they're learning something about that culture and they're feeling like it's all normalized. And that was my goal as well, to just normalize what it looks like to be a little Black boy, to normalize a Black family, to normalize what it looks like to have autism, so that people no longer feel hidden from our society.
Okay. If I could ask you, for the listening audience and for some of the people who may view these archives that are parents, what are three things that you could say to parents in regards to identification, and then also after identification, kind of working through the process?
Identification of a delay. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
So I'll give you a quick rule of thumb that usually sticks with people. If by the time your child reaches their first birthday, they should have at least one or be using single words, like true words. So they should have a word for their milk, to say milk. They should be able to say ball, at least using single words. By their second birthday, they should be putting two words together, like um, eat cookie, go bye bye, because bye bye is considered one word. Where mommy. And then by the third birthday, they're starting to get longer and longer utterances. So just keep that in mind, that by each year, you should be seeing your child's vocabulary and their length of their phrases get longer and longer. And if you feel like something's not right, and if you feel like your child is not where they should be, talk to your pediatrician. Don't wait. Talk to your pediatrician right away. I would recommend those two things. And I forgot what your other question was.
So after, like after the fact, so say uh, they went to the pediatrician and now they're home. Like, what are some tips for them, to kind of deal with that whole situation right there?
One of the biggest things that parents can do to help improve their children's language, whether they have a delay or not, is to read. If you just read a book with your child for a few minutes a day, you expose them to a number of words, and you have the potential of building a vocabulary of close to 1 million words by the time they reach kindergarten, depending on how many books per day you read. So I would say read to your children, even if you think they're not understanding and they are at least listening. It could be for 1 minute and then build your way up to 5 minutes. But read a book with your children. If you can't read the full book because their attention won't maintain, they just can't tolerate it, then just show them the pictures in the book and point to pictures and talk about and name the things that you see on each of the pages. But that time that you spend together, not only is it nurturing, but you're also helping to improve their comprehension skills as well as their vocabulary. So reading, that is my tip for everyone that's listening out there. Pick up a book and read with your children or the children in your lives.
All right, all right, all right. Do you have anything coming up
Um,
that you can share with us? Any kind of events, any kind of something, virtual something, physical something, anything that you want to share with us?
Well, because of COVID, I don't have any in-person physical things coming up, unfortunately. I just finished doing a virtual read aloud to a class with school, so I have a few more of those coming up. And I am, my schedule is opening up. So if there anyone out there who's interested in having a read aloud for your class or your child or your teacher or your administrator, and you would like for me to come into your school and do a virtual read aloud, that's something that we could definitely take a look at and schedule. Um, Other than that, I will just continue with what I'm always doing, which is blogging, providing those resources for folks. The book is still available and I'm still promoting the book. And anyone who orders the book from my website directly, I am signing those copies since I couldn't do an in-person book signing due to COVID. I'm still signing copies and sending them out that way. So if you are interested in a signed copy of Liam's First Cut, you can go to my website, tayejones.com, to receive a copy of that. And other than that, I don't have anything else planned that I can share with the audience just yet. Oh, and I guess I should also mention that you can find me on Instagram at Having Our Say. And you can also find me on Facebook by the same name. And if you're interested in a lot of those resources that I referred to regarding speech and language skills, those are on my speech and language website, which is havingourSay.org.
All right, so we're on the website. I'm going to take a little moment and kind of walk us through the website really quick.
Sure. So that is the cover of the book, Liam's First Cut. There on the main page. If you go to the book, the tab, the book, you can read a little bit more about the book. There's a synopsis there that describes what the book is about. And I've told you a bit about it during the interview, but you can find out more about how this book is dedicated to showing Liam and how Liam prepares for his journey as he gets ready to go to the barbershop for the first time. I do have some customers who have written reviews for me. So you can go and read and find out what other parents and educators and even children are saying. There's some students from a school that I just read at a few days ago that left some wonderful reviews as well. So you can take a look at those as well. And like I said, there's grandparents who have received the book and loved it, as well as parents, other speech language pathologists, educators. And so there are a few reviews there that you can read. And then also on the site under About the Author, it does talk a little bit about me, about my experience, and how my experience as a speech pathologist led to my becoming an author and authoring this particular book. So it is a marriage of my career and my experiences, and also a bit of my creative side all put together to create Liam's First Cut. And then under the shop tab, that's where you can go to order a copy of the book. But I also have some apparel that's listed on the book. I'm sorry, that's listed on the site. The book is available in paperback and hardcover. So you have two options there for when you are going to place your order. And I also created a digital. Right now, it's digital. When we get back to having larger in-person events, I probably will have a hard copy as well. But for now, I thought it'd be easier for some folks to just get a digital social story that you can download on your own or print it and have your children either color the pages or just go through it. It's perfect to use, especially if your child's preparing for their next visit to the barber shop, or if you just want to use it as a follow-up activity to reading the book. And then this is my tagline. This is the basis for everything that I do. I truly believe that everyone should be seen and heard. So when it comes to either visibility in media or being heard and having your voice shared, that's who I am. And those t-shirts are currently available on my website. And I do intend to have a new item launching pretty soon, probably towards the end of the month. There'll be a new item that's more winter appropriate coming soon. And the very last tab where it says contact, that's where you can reach me. If you have any questions, if you're interested in having me come out for a book signing, if you're interested in ordering a large quantity of books for your school, we do offer a discount for an order of 50 or more. You can just fill out the information there under the contact page. If you have questions, reach out to us and I will be getting back to you as soon as possible.
So I definitely want to invite you back on for a part two. So if we can link up with some of the people who have read the book, some of the parents, and kind of get their feedback and do like a little book giveaway where we give away maybe 5 or 10 copies of the book to some families out here. So I definitely want to set that up with you, and we could do that part two whenever you get some more availability. You know, it's,
That sounds great.
tis the season.
Yes,
Tis the season. So you know,
yes, let's definitely work on that, make that happen. I'd love to come back.
all right. So final marks as we close. Acknowledgement, shout outs, anything else. Please let the people know one more time where they can find you and how they can support you and where they can get their autographed copy. I need a few of those myself. You see what I'm saying? So
So
uh,
the book is available at many resellers. You can order a copy of the book through Amazon and through Barnes and Noble. But if you want to support me and if you'd like a signed copy of the book, please order it from tayejones.com. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook under Having Our Say. And if you have any questions, if you're interested in having me come out to your school, if you want to find out more about getting that large order, contact me at hello at tayejones.com or email me at hello@tayejones.com.
definitely, definitely. Thank you again for your time,
Thank
for your
you.
jewels, for your love coming through here and giving us the real deal. This has
Thank,
been a treat. So definitely looking forward to having you back again.
thank you. It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Have a good night.
All right.